How's it going, everybody? We got another crossover episode for you. Patriots Daily, Patriots Beat. I'm Alex Barth with Brian Hines, Mike Kadlick, and Taylor Kyles. Thanks to everybody sticking around. I know we started a little late. Traffic is a bitch. So here we are now, though. It's time to start show. What? Can I not say that?
No, we're good. We're podcasting.
My phone just started the stream for some reason. My bad.
I heard your voice off Taylor's phone on the stream. That's what I was.
Oh, okay. So, well, here we are. We're starting. We're going. We're off and running. Day 8 of Patriots OTAs. Day 3 that was open to the media. It was also the final OTA practice for the media. They'll have one or two more practices this week. Friday is now, so it's not open to the media. I don't know that it's outright canceled or if they're doing one of those like off-site kind of practices. We will be back next week for me and Dory minicamp, and we'll have some more of these crossover shows then. But, you know, I don't want to so much put a bow on it because minicamp's going to be more of the same and there is a lot more evaluation to be done. But just for us, you know, another part of the offseason checked off, but plenty to talk about today. It felt like a more intense day. That's relatively speaking. There's still no pads. There's still no contact, but they went into low red zone. It was a lot of 11 on 11, and it was a lot more Drake Maye. Drake Maye has passed Bailey Zappe on the non-existent depth chart. Drake Maye, very effusive for practice that there is no depth chart. There is no starters or backups, but it's been through the first 2 practices we went to, Jacoby Brissett, Bailey Zappe, Drake Maye, and then Joe Milton if he's out there. Today it was Maye going after Brissett, and at times just the two, and going from Maye back to Brissett, back to Maye, then to Zappe. So early on, we kind of lamented that, hey, is Drake Maye getting enough reps? And we all kind of had the caveat on that take that it's day 1 of a long process, and we're sure they'll build up. Well, here we go. They're building up. Let's start with Brian. We'll start with you. You're in the second spot there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been waiting to see. Every time we've come on here, we've said that's our big thing, right? We need Drake Maye to get as many reps as possible. He's the number 3 pick. He's the face of the franchise. This is the time of the year where he should be getting these reps to develop. So it was good to finally see him working second there in those team drills ahead of Bailey Zappe. Still Jacoby, like I think he had 10 or 11 more reps than him. So he's still the number 1. Van Pelt even said Jacoby's our starter, but good to see Drake getting more involved here as we go. And even he kind of said after practice, like it's a competition between him, Bailey, and Jacoby. They've been rotating. So again, like the big caveat on this is maybe this has happened throughout, you know, the spring and we just haven't seen it. But this was the first time we got to see it. And that was good to see him kind of work his way up there.
Yeah, I think it's noteworthy. Yeah, no, I think it's noteworthy too. Like, Taylor, you asked Drake Maye before practice if that was sort of a planned thing that all the rookies would be taking reps behind the vets. And he said, no, not really. It's kind of just, you know, what you guys may see and everyone's going to kind of be sprinkled in together. But today was the first day where it seemed like a rookie actually jumped a vet on the depth chart because everything we've seen so far was all the rookies repped after the veterans, even when it came down to, you know, the offensive line and the wide receivers, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, guys like that didn't really get in. And then today you saw a little bit of a change, not only a quarterback, but Caden Wallace was out there with, you know, some of the first sets of offensive line, and Jalen Polk sort of got some run in there with, I don't want to really call them the ones because, again, it is so early, but, you know, some noteworthy reps, I guess I'd say, on offense. So good for Drake Maye, good for really, you know, a bunch of the young guys too. So good to see him get that chance this early, right? You know, we've talked about whether they would sort of throw him into the fire starting in minicamp or wait till training camp. And, you know, while Bailey Zappe's, you know, still here, he's kind of the quote unquote backup, but they're getting him in the mix early. So I like to see it. It's about time because he is the future and you want to see what you have in the guy.
All right, Taylor,
I think it's okay for us to say ones because Alex Austin literally without being prompted used the term ones. So fair. Even if the coaches aren't using it, I think the players can still tell when there's a certain group in that's, you know, playing with the guys who are projected to have a role. Although they did definitely start to mix guys in. They have been doing it, but we saw today, it felt like Jalen Polk definitely got more reps with the one starters, whatever you want to call them. That was interesting. But in terms of the quarterbacks, well, I find it most interesting that Drake Maye now is over Bailey Zappe pretty definitively from what we saw. We'll see what it looks like in minicamp as well if that continues. But Drake Maye did say that he wants it to be 3 quarterbacks going into the summer. And as we know, that third quarterback doesn't need to be a world beater necessarily. Like we saw Trace McSorley in that role, and bless his heart, but like it was tough to watch when he was in there. Like the inaccuracy was pretty bad. And Joe Milton obviously has more talent, so you'd like to get him more opportunities, even if they aren't pretty. Obviously, when I was talking about Bailey Zappe potentially staying on the team as a veteran backup, that was with the caveat of if you're not comfortable with Maye being the backup, where if Jacoby does, God forbid, get hurt, then you have to put somebody in. It makes sense. But I think we could probably agree that Zappe's been at best inconsistent throughout the practices that we've seen, which may have in part led to Maye rising up the depth chart, so-called, in addition to him just performing better. So it kind of feels like Zappe's, slipping down the depth chart and could potentially not be on the roster if this kind of thing continues through minicamp.
All right, so let's talk about Drake Maye's performance today, because it was a little bit of a roller coaster day for him. Early on, he looked very good. Like he's getting the most of the reps, and you're seeing the growth. He did a great job moving in the pocket, couple throws in motion, had one like off angle throw, dropped the arm, still zipped it in. I think that was to Juju Smith-Schuster, right? Through tight coverage for a touchdown. Yeah. But then towards the end of practice, they go into 11s, they go into full field. There was one, I don't know what happened. He had Juju Smith-Schuster had a great day today. He had Juju Smith-Schuster wide open, 10, 12 yards downfield, kind of on the hash, and just,
sailed it
way over his head, not even close. Right to Caleb Ford-Dement, the rookie corner who picked it off. Comes back on the next series, miscommunication with Antonio Gibson. Gibson's running a crosser. He sits in the zone. Maye leads him. Kyle Duggar makes a diving interception. So 2 picks. A bit of an up and down day. Now, look, that's going to happen with any rookie, but I think that's also why they're taking it slow. And Alex Van Pelt said before practice, 2 terms he used, it's a marathon more than a sprint when it comes to developing rookie quarterbacks or young quarterbacks. And he also said the growth's not linear. It's not all in one direction. You want a net positive, but it's going to be forward and back and forward and back. And I think today was a great example of that. And that's why, especially, I know I said this was the most intense practice we've seen. We've seen 3 practices. In a low intensity practice like this, you want to be really careful to not get too high or too low. I was up there watching with a former Patriots beat host. Everybody knows who that is. It was drooling over Drake Maye and
a man who shall not be named.
No, people got mad at me when I did that when he first left. I'm talking to Evan and he's drooling over Drake Maye. He's like, why isn't he starting? And like, look, he was performing well, but he also had the picks, and the picks don't mean he shouldn't start or he's behind or anything, but it's just, you really got to be careful this time of year to look at the full body of work. I know that's kind of a cop-out take, but that's really how I feel about practice today.
I look at it too. It's like, and I joked on Twitter that, Drake next year we'll get the number 1 pick next year and we'll try with somebody else. Like, of course this kind of stuff is going to happen. Like that's the, trials and tribulations of being a rookie quarterback. You have to get your feet wet somehow. You're not going to be perfect. Brett Favre's, not, I don't want to say he's not the best example. I'm not trying to compare him to Brett Favre, but at one history and touchdowns, and let it in picks. Like that's kind of what you're getting with a gunslinger. You want to limit that kind of stuff, but sometimes you sail one, sometimes you make a bad throw. So I wasn't necessarily too upset with the interceptions. Again, that's going to happen. But you're right. Up and down day overall. There was one play where me and Taylor talked about it on our stand-up. Like they were in the red zone. I don't remember if it was 11s or 7s, but it was like Drake got onto his 3rd progression, looked one way, looked again, and then backside, he has Douglas on the back line for a touchdown, and he zipped right in their sidearm. Like that was the play of the day, in my opinion. So when you get that, and then you can balance it out with picks on June 4th, and it's this early in this guy's career, I'm okay with it as long as you continue to get him the reps with these guys. And like you said, Alex, you want to see progression. It's not always going to be linear, but overall from now until the summer, you want it to continue to, tick up.
And Alex Van Pelt did say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So this is not like this one day. You obviously want to see him bounce back, but this is not going to be indicative of who Drake Maye is. I think we all know that, but also it's nice to hear from the coaches that, this is a day-by-day thing, and we're going to see how he grows. And I thought it was still pretty significant that before practice, we heard from Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo, and they spoke pretty highly of Maye's development, saying like he's putting in the hours. They're already working like 12 to 14-hour days, but he also sees him and Jacoby Brissett like in the steam room watching film and doing what they can, specifically Maye, to really be able to catch up and potentially take that top job. And, as much as Jacoby, I'm sure, wants to be the starter, I also think he wants to be able to be the best kind of leader and mentor for Drake Maye that he can be, because that impact is going to last, possibly throughout Maye's career. And also TC McCartney mentioned how he wants to make sure that Drake's feet and eyes are tethered together, which is something that we already knew coming in. But again, it's kind of cool hearing it from the actual coaches, because it's one thing to do it on one play, but you have to do it every single time. And one thing I also asked TC was, how do you balance the fact that Maye is the super talented quarterback who can be accurate even when he's off platform? And he mentioned, in the NFL, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for this guy to show that he can do things like that, especially with all the pressure and everything in the NFL. But what you really want is to make sure that he has it down. And it's, there's that saying that, like, you're not going to rise to the occasion, you're going to fall to your habits. And that's what you want, so that it's muscle memory and he's got it baked in. So when things do get hard, everything is still lined up, or at least he's doing most things right, and his athleticism takes over. And I don't know what happened on the play to Juju where he just sailed the ball, but maybe it was something where his feet and eyes weren't necessarily tied together. So, not the biggest deal in the world. He still did have some positive moments as well. We'll just have to see how he bounces back come minicamp.
Yeah,
Brian. I'm gonna just try fixing this before it drives everybody crazy.
We lost Mike, but
yeah.
I thought it was also noticeable. There you go. That's a good one. That a lot of the success came in like the 7-on-7 work. And then when you move to 11-on-11s and you put the offensive line in there, which I'm sure we'll get to, the offensive line was a bit of a mess today, missing some guys. But that's when things for the whole offense too, like even Jacoby Brissett, things kind of fell apart in the 11-on-11 work. But you mentioned like the Juju one was bad. I didn't think the Antonio Gibson one, from like my point of view, and Taylor, we were talking about that. We were right next to each other. We thought that was more on Gibson. It looked like man coverage, maybe should have, continued the route, continued that drag route and not sat down in zone. Looked like Maye was expecting that. That's what led to that interception. But this is kind of the annoying part, that we only get one day a week, right? We can't go tomorrow and see how he bounces back, because he ended poorly. He ended with 2 interceptions. We'd love to go out there tomorrow and see how he bounces back, and even look at the reps again. Like, is he still repping number 2? But unfortunately we can't. So that's what, as we turn to mini camp, we'll be there every day, and training camp, obviously those are the advantages of those time periods.
Sorry, I'm trying to get composed here with that, Mike. So yeah, that was it for the quarterbacks. And I don't think it was just Maye who was up and down either, for the record. I mean, Jacoby Brissett had one throw to LaMichael Petway where Petway had 2 defenders on top of him, and it just did not matter. I mean, just threaded the ball into. That's the one, Taylor, you remember you said something to me like, you would have thought Petway won the Super Bowl, the way he was celebrating that guy. Look, good for him. Like, go out there, have fun. Like, that's important, but he had that, but he also had some play. Brissett and Zappe didn't throw any picks. And Zappe had his moment too. He had a high point ball to Jaheim Bell, good touch, but they were, we'll get to the offensive line, but they were also holding the ball a lot. And some of that was coverage, but some of it did look to be like, Mac Jones, he's talking about take a profit, right? Just take what the defense gives you. And there were times where Zappe, especially, it felt like he had guys open, but it wasn't the guy he wanted. And he held on to the ball. And I think somebody had him down. I hate doing sacks in non-padded practice, but somebody had him down for, I think, like 3 or 4 sacks on what was only 8 reps. Jacoby took a couple sacks as well. So, when you get in a red zone, you start running some more complex concepts. Drake Maye talked about that before practice. So there naturally is going to be a learning curve here in terms of getting on the same page when you talk about the more complex elements of the offense. But you did sort of see a disconnect from all the quarterbacks today.
Yeah. And KJ Osborne kind of talked about that after practice. He said he played in an offense similar to this in Minnesota for the first 2 years, I think, of his career. And he's like, you don't really see how this comes together until we get the pads on in training camp and everyone's kind of, flowing and more into it. And, they were in the low red area for most of the day. So it is tight quarters. It's condensed down there, but definitely looked like a unit that was kind of repping that for the first time together this year.
Yeah. It seems
Taylor,
like
any thoughts on the splits?
Yeah, on the splits, not necessarily. Again, I thought it was good that Drake Maye was the guy who was getting the lion's share. Even Joe Milton, I honestly thought, took advantage of his opportunities. He threw what should have been 2 touchdowns on his first 2 reps. One was dropped. Then I think it just seemed like there was a miscommunication on another. But really, for the most part, I thought he was solid. But yeah, outside of that, and again, he only had 4 attempts. But the other quarterbacks, it was just super up and down. And Jacoby Brissett had the most bright spots. Like there was one throw he had to Demario Douglas where he was covered, but Jacoby threw it before he came out of his break. So by the time Douglas did come out, the defender wasn't ready to break it up. And that was a touchdown. And he had a couple connections with Hunter Henry. Surprise, surprise. You know, the veteran, he knows who his red zone monster is. And they didn't connect on everything. They had a couple that weren't completed, but still for the most part, it was kind of cool seeing them get to connect. But in the red zone, I think it's so important to remember that it is very difficult for any offense to execute in not just the red zone, but the low red zone. It's literally the hardest thing to do in football. And this is an offense that's got a ton of new pieces. Like we talked about similar things last season, but there are even fewer guys on this offense that have worked together. Neither of the quarterbacks have worked with any of the receivers outside of, this camp. So I don't want to read too much into it, but you do want to see development. This is okay. That's the starting point. You expect the defense to have a leg up. It wasn't just leg up. It was dominant. But, from now on, when we do see other opportunities, you want to see some kind of development, better timing, not holding on to the ball. Even Drake Maye said, I think there was a throw to Demario Douglas where he was like, yeah, I wish I'd gotten the ball out. It takes sooner. So there are improvements that need to be made. But as we say with every single OTA, grain of salt, because there's so many it's about growth. It's not about necessarily production.
All right, Mike, let's try this again.
Hey,
oh boy.
What up?
What'd you think of the other quarterbacks today besides Drake Maye?
Well, can you hear me now? Is my connection better?
Yes.
You're good.
We got
All
it.
right, hell yeah. Other quarterbacks.
Taylor was going in and out right when you jump back in, so that had me worried, but he's good now.
Oh boy. All right. Impressions on other quarterbacks besides Drake Maye. I thought Jacoby Brissett was great. I thought Brissett looked really good. We know he understands the offense. They've all kind of alluded to that. TC McCartney mentioned it today. Alex Van Pelt really hammered it home too. So look, I think he looked solid. His arm is strong as ever. He zips the ball in there. He gets what they're doing. Joe Milton, look, I don't think he has much of a spot on this team really long term. But man, when you stand back there and watch him fire the ball in there, it's like nothing I've ever seen. Like it's incredible. And sometimes I worry that there's no real finesse to it, and it's always on a line. Like there's no touch to it. He's always just throwing rockets. But man, if you can do that and you can finally kind of hone that in and find some touch eventually, that's a really strong weapon to have. So those two guys, I thought, those were the thoughts on them. And then Bailey Zappe, pretty good later on in practice, but still kind of roller coaster, just like we've seen for the entirety of his Patriots career. So.
All right, so let's get to the other positions, but first let's hear from our friends at Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. The finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. When the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball was just getting started. With young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breonna Taylor and Asia Wilson, you could win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the basketball board, and I'm taking Jaylen Brown's overs on points and rebounds because dude has been absolutely killing it. I'm also going to take Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made and Breonna Stewart for more than 25 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
All right, so we've kind of already hinted at the offensive line. Now, I'll say this. I find it so tough to talk about the offensive line coming off of practice like this just because they weren't padded. They aren't supposed to make a ton of contact. It's really just kind of setting picks. You're just kind of standing in the way, and the guy's free to run around you, and that's it. My bigger issue with the offensive line today is, all right, so Michael Onwenu-Chuk's core 4 not there, which, it's optional, fine. This should have been a day if they're really serious about Caden Wallace developing him at left tackle. This, to me, should have been a day that he was at left tackle a lot, and he spent most of the day at right tackle. And I get Taylor, I see laughing. So we talked about this before when we were down there. Like, it's not that uncommon to have a day in camp where you start playing people, off their usual position, especially on the line. You're just like, all right, we're going to play all our right tackles at left and all our left tackles at right today, just to get everybody the reps and see maybe who can be a potential swing tackle. But Caden Wallace's development should supersede that, especially because he's already playing on his offhand anyway. That's where you're trying to get him. So on the flip side, you saw Calvin Anderson, the left tackle, where he should be playing more because he has experience there. But that was the big head scratcher to me. I thought they had a great opportunity to give Caden Wallace a ton of work on the left side today. They didn't do it, but Taylor, I know you disagree.
So, look, I don't fully disagree. I do think it's important for Caden Wallace to get reps at left tackle. This is also the first time we've even seen him at right tackle in the practices we've been to. We also have no idea what the context is and what's been happening in practices previous or what's going to happen in future practices. Also, every offensive lineman or every offensive tackle seemed like they were playing on the opposite side where they usually play. Like Tyrone Wheatley Jr. was at left tackle. We don't usually see him there. But Darian Lowe, who we all know is much better at left tackle than right, was at right tackle. So, again, I don't think that Caden Wallace doesn't need the reps, but we have no idea if he's getting more behind the scenes and repping extra, on his own, or what Scott Peters' plan is. And cross-training is something that they value. And yes, Caden Wallace has experience at right tackle, but he doesn't have experience at right tackle doing what Scott Peters specifically wants him to do and practicing those techniques. So if, something happens to Mike Nwenu and you're like, all right, I don't want to switch Chuks Okorafor back and forth if he's been at left tackle for multiple weeks, it's going to be Caden Wallace most likely at right tackle unless he's not good enough to play and it's a veteran or something like that. But if we are in mini camp or training camp and we are seeing Caden Wallace for days at right tackle, then I'm like, yeah, what the hell is going on? This is funky. One day I'm not moved, especially because, again, it wasn't an isolated thing. Everybody at the offensive tackle position seemed like they were playing on the opposite side from where they usually are.
All right, Brian, who are you siding with, me or Taylor?
I was on Barth's side. That was one of the first things I pointed out when they first moved into team reps there in 11s. I'm like, why is Caden Wallace on the right side? Like he played there at Penn State. Like if we're playing him at left tackle, and that sounds like the plan, now is a perfect time with Chuks not there to get him as many left tackle reps as possible. And then I got that whole spiel from Taylor on the field, and I got it again. That's the third time I think I've heard it now, because I got it on the field, I got it in the media workroom with Barth, and now I got it here. So I get what you're saying. Like maybe yesterday they were out there and he got all the reps, or not yesterday, maybe tomorrow they come out and he's at left tackle, and then the next day he's at left tackle, and this is just a pure cross training day. But if you're moving him to left tackle, I want him getting as many reps as humanly possible on that side. And today seemed like a great day to do that, and they didn't. So I was a little disappointed in that.
Mike?
Yeah, sorry, Taylor, I'm tripling down. I mean, yeah, sure. If you have a cross training day, fine by me, and that's how it should go. You're seeing these guys in different positions, but we haven't seen Caden Wallace in the position they want him to play yet, right? Like, yeah, he's played left tackle before, but he was a right tackle in college, so I guess he's quote unquote used to that now. So give him the left tackle today. Like you need to train him at left tackle before you cross train him at right tackle, if that's the plan for him. Now, if that's not the plan for him, so be it. But again, I don't understand. And again, you're right, Taylor. We don't know the context of the situation. He could be at left tackle all the time then on the days that we're not there. And so they use this as an opportunity. But again, as Alex alluded to, with Chuks and Onwenu not there, your next up left tackle in theory is Caden Wallace. You should be at left tackle the entire practice. So I didn't like it. But again, Taylor, this is kind of the third or fourth time you've heard it from me, from Brian, from Alex. So I'll leave us to it. But yeah.
And I will say just a couple other things real quick. One, you guys know when it comes to non-padded practices, it's just really hard to get a rise out of me when it comes to stuff that happens on the offensive line. These reps are not nearly as valuable as when they can actually go full speed. Like Cole Strange has talked about it when it comes to bull rushes. Like you can't simulate that kind of thing, and you're not really supposed to be bull rushing people when you don't have pads on. And if you are, you're not going 100%. So it's muscle memory for sure, but you can get that muscle memory in. Like if this is the first time we've seen him take any snaps at anywhere that wasn't left tackle. And again, that's the real thing. It's one thing if they're switching him around. It's like, all right, geez, like this is starting to get a little weird. Also, there's a trickle-down effect. If he had stayed at left tackle, then that affects, does that mean that Calvin Anderson is still at right tackle and can't get his reps at left? It's not – we talk about Drake Maye and Caden Wallace and the rookies and all that, but it's not just about them. There should be kind of not prioritizing necessarily, because these early round guys should be getting some significant number of reps this season. But the veterans need those too. Those are also valuable. So, of course, we want Caden Wallace to come along as quickly as possible. But the veterans also need some type of exposure and experience so that they can contribute. And the guys in the coaching can see, hey, are these older guys good enough that maybe we don't necessarily have to play Caden if he's not ready? If the guy's not ready in year one, it's not the worst thing in the world. He's an older prospect, but it's a lot worse. We say the same thing about Drake Maye. These guys don't need necessarily to start week one, the guys who will be playing every snap. So that's it. I don't want to keep, droning on about it, but it's just, I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Personally.
Do they have?
I'll just say
do they
this.
have virtual reality for offensive tackles yet? Is Caden Wallace getting 100 simulated snaps at left tackle in the locker room right now?
I'll text Scott Peters with the number I don't have.
Look, I'll just say this. To your point, Taylor, about Calvin Anderson, I am fine sacrificing Calvin Anderson's reps to get Caden Wallace ready. I think that not taking that approach is part of what cost them in the past. Is you need to invest in the rookies, and you got to put the kids, and maybe not in this setting specifically, but just as a whole. If it was just today and that's it, I guess, whatever, but you got to put the kids on the field, and they're going to make mistakes, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be frustrating, and it's going to make you roll your eyes, but it's the only way they're going to get better. You can't just leave them on the sideline until they're ready, because they're not going to get ready. They could afford to do that, 10 years ago for a number of different reasons. And that was a unique thing. They're not going to get back there. That's not, it's not how the other 31 teams operate. So I just, I just hope that I am a little worried about how they're handling Caden Wallace's development early for such an important position, a position that they failed to struggle for a long time, or that they failed to find an answer for a long time. They've struggled for a long time. I don't love their plan A there either. I can't help but it stands out to me.
In Scott Peters, we trust. I'm done. Scott Peters,
right.
we trust.
I mean, that's kind of seems to be the line. Like, Evan's big into the offensive line too, and that's his calling card. And if that's what it is, that's what it is, and that's great. But let's see it then, because they're putting a lot of eggs in the Scott Peters basket.
Also, if Caden Wallace was not specifically Scott Peters' pick, I would admittedly be more worried. I would. But if it's the guy who's going to be training him, and it's not like this is a guy who's fresh off the street. Like, no, he hasn't been the offensive line coach before. All he did was learn under one of the best in history. So, that just is why I don't feel quite as concerned. I'm definitely I'm cautiously optimistic because of Scott Peters. There's the caution there for a reason. But again, this was his pick and a guy that he's like, yeah, he can play left tackle. I asked him about him today as well, and he wouldn't give too many details about Caden. But he was saying that I forget what it was exactly. I got to run it back. But
Taylor, though, you would have, objectively speaking, you would have rather seen him at left tackle today, right?
Oh, I mean,
like you're not excited that he was at right.
I mean,
tackle.
point blank, yeah, I want to see him get as many reps as left tackle as possible for sure. But I don't know why they had him at right, and it was something they did with everybody. So that's just, it's one day. Again, if this is a continued pattern, then for sure I'll walk back and be like, I don't know what the plan is here. Even if I don't know what it is concerning. But one day, I'm sorry, it doesn't move me.
All right, Brian, any more thoughts on the offensive line before we move on?
That was pretty much it. Nice to see City So back. He was left guard, but that was the tackles were the big thing with Big Mike and Chooks out today.
More center reps too today for Antonio Mafi. So I mean, they're going to give him a chance to make the roster after he struggled last year, at least to, be sort of cross-trained all across the inside and not just at the guard position. So I think that's noteworthy considering how he kind of struggled last year. It doesn't seem like he's getting squeezed out too much yet. He was sort of taking those second reps behind David Andrews. So,
yeah, he seems like a guy that's on the fringe, and the more positions he can play, the better.
Exactly.
Or if he can play a position.
Yeah. All right. Wide receivers. Two big standouts today at the wide receiver position. One kind of no duh. One may come as a little more of a surprise. We'll start with the easy one. Pop Douglas. They still can't cover this kid. They can't. Loved Drake Maye, by the way, comparing him to Josh Downs.
Yes.
After practice. Downs a little bit bigger, but if you remember our draft coverage from, Mike, that was me and you, right?
Yes.
2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Josh Downs stands, a couple of them right here. So,
well, and if you follow our draft coverage, how we like to do the tiers during the draft. So we had Zay Flowers was the top of that kind of receiver tier. And then Josh Downs was day 2 Zay, and Pop Douglas was day 3 Zay. So would you look at that? Now look, anytime you have a player that size, 5'8", 190, like it comes with the caveat of let's see what he does when the pads come on. Now, obviously we saw him do it last year, but he looks like he's taking his game to another level. So he set himself up to build on that season he had last year. I wouldn't go, betting him for MVP or anything yet. That's kind of my point, is we have a long way to go, but
do we give him the Justin Jefferson contract?
Right, exactly. Let's not give him 140 million just yet. But I mean, in a setting where you would expect him to thrive, he is thriving. And we know that it at least somewhat translates because we did this last year with him where he dominated. I don't remember actually if he did that much in the spring, but I remember when we got to the first couple of practices at training camp and they got into one-on-ones, it was nobody was near him. He kept putting guys on the ground, but he's small. Let's see when the pads come on, and the pads came on and he continued to dominate. So
he was another good
start from today.
He was immediately their starting slot receiver, like as soon as camp started, and he never let it go. And we kind of gave him the, okay.
He fumbled. And Bill let it go.
The Tyquan Thornton thing where, he's good without pads, but let's see. And then it just was seamless from there. So, another, I guess I'll jump in. Another great day from Douglas. I think he's also, I like to watch some of the off the field stuff and how he, works in the room and things like that. He already kind of seems like a leader there too. Like paying attention, helping guys out, but also like just dancing and having fun. And like, he seems like he has a lot of good confidence about himself, which I think is a positive too. But no, he was great today. I mentioned my favorite play of the day with May finding him across the back of the end zone, but I think he had like 3 or 4 touchdowns during 11-on-11s where, the play's kind of broken. He finds a little cushion. Somebody finds him and he rolls into the end zone for a touchdown. Like we talked about it on our mailbag, Taylor. I think Pop's going to lead them in targets. I think he's going to lead them in receptions. I have no doubt that he's going to continue to do what he did last year, and what we've seen at camp so far has only really helped that out.
Yeah, he had a touchdown from all the quarterbacks too, which really stands out because he's repping with different guys and still finding ways to make plays. And he just looks different when he goes through drills. Like the foot speed, the explosiveness. The younger guys have a little bit of that, but just Pop, the way he's proportioned, it looks really impressive. And then I'm trying to think. There was Drake Maye said you just can't cover this guy in a phone booth. And in the low red zone where the offense looked pretty bad, Pop was the only one who consistently did stand out in a positive way. And that was kind of why. He's a really tough guy to cover in short areas. And even if you cover him, he knows how to play bigger than his size and is great in those contested catch situations. So, again, there wasn't a lot of positives to write home about for the offense, but Pop was absolutely one of them. And it's just nice to see that there's some consistency on this offense, especially with Kendrick Bourne out, another guy where you were hoping that he would be what he's been in the past, but we have no idea when he's going to come back.
Brian?
Yeah, he's been their best receiver consistently throughout these spring practices. And it is, like you said, Alex, we've seen him do it in real games with the pads on too. So it's not just, a Trey Nixon or a Tyquan Thornton type thing. Like this is real. He moves at a different speed. We knew that. There's no other receiver on this roster who can kind of has that jitterbug ability. So it's insanely impressive. It pumped me up to hear May compare him to Josh Downs because we've been saying that so much. And Josh Downs was so good with Drake Maye. He caught 90 balls, 1,000+ yards, and 11 touchdowns too, I think. So that's a really fun, could be a really fun connection here to develop.
All right, let's hear from our friends at Game Time, then we'll get into the other standout receiver.
The NBA Finals are finally here, and if I have any chance at all to find tickets to a game, it's probably going to be through Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Getting through the Game Time app is super easy, and I really like their user interface. All you have to do is go to the game or event that you want to attend, go through the venue to see where you want to sit relative to the action, then you can actually get a panoramic view of your seat so you'll know exactly what to expect once you get your ticket. Game Time is also great for those weekends where you're not really sure what you want to do with your night because you can just scroll through, look at flash deals, zone deals, or last-minute tickets and find a plan to spend the rest of your day or evening. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Taylor, you okay?
Yeah, I just sometimes I got to get the ADHD out, you know.
You had a little moment there during the break. All right. So I mentioned there's one more receiver that stood out, and that was Juju Smith-Schuster. Got open all day, had a couple of touchdown catches, really seemed to have a knack. I thought he was doing good with like the toe tap stuff. You know, this comes after I wasn't any more than 60% last year. I'm 100% now comment from him. We've talked about this. You have 4 roster locks: Baker, Polk, Douglas, Bourne. Because when Bourne's ready to start the season, which sounds like he will be. Osborne probably makes it. If he doesn't make it, it seems like they didn't keep 5 receivers. Although Osborne had a rough day today. And then do they keep that 6th spot? And if they do, it's between Juju, Tyquan, Rager, whoever else you want to throw in there. We've talked about that, you know, kind of being a roster crunch. Are you believing that Juju can play his way back onto this roster? Brian, I'll start with you.
I think he can. He had some like drops today. He dropped one from Joe Milton, but he was getting open. He had the touchdown in the back corner from May, and then one across the middle from Jacoby, and then he had the other one where he was open, the May interception. Like he was wide open on the second level.
Great job of getting open before that.
Yeah, so if he's healthy, like that's the big thing, because he looked washed last year, right? Like after the catch, just very slow. If he's healthy and he can move a little better and he can get open, like I think there's a path. And I keep going back to like last year, the Pittsburgh game, and a week or two before that, it seemed like they kind of let him be more of a big body contested catch, you know, slot receiver, a big guy just over the middle of the field. And the Pittsburgh game, it worked. There were other chances where like the chemistry wasn't there with Mac and Bailey Zappe because he missed the sprain, and that's something he talked about. So if you get some big arm quarterbacks now, you know, out on the field, and he can build chemistry with them, and his role kind of evolves, so he's more of maybe a big slot, and he doesn't have to be this jitterbug type of guy. I think there's a role for him, and it's not going to come on special teams. I thought it was noticeable today. They finally worked kickoffs, and he was the only receiver. He was working one-on-one with receiver coach Tyler Hughes, because all the other receivers were like working on special teams. So it's got to come as a receiver, and if he's healthy, I think there is a way that maybe he could sneak on, and if he's productive like that would be a huge kind of random and added bonus for this group too.
Taylor,
he's kind of in that offensive lineman category for me, where I'm like, let's see what happens when the Pats come on, because once guys can be a little more physical with him, we'll see just how much juice he actually has, and whether he can consistently make the plays like we saw in Pittsburgh. And like Brian, we're on the same page. That gave me some hope that he can regain some kind of form where he's, you know, at least a competent receiver. Even as a blocker last season, there were times where he looked so bad, they weren't even using him as that. Even when it was like, all right, he's not a good receiver, but he's big. And then he wasn't really taking advantage of those opportunities either. And last year was such a cluster, you know, I'm not going to hold it against him too much. I definitely want to see if he can stack good days together. It was kind of worried me that it seemed like he was working alone with Tyler Hughes for a while. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't want to blow it up or anything, but he wasn't working with the other guys. I don't know what that's about. You hope that he really is still 100%, or at least working his way to get really close to that. But like you guys said, KJ Osborne was inconsistent today as well. If the young guys aren't really there yet, like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, by the time we get towards the end of the summer, it's like they're clearly talented, but I don't know that we really want them to have large roles early on. I mean, you're paying Juju a lot of money, and you're going to have to pay a lot of money to get rid of him. So they have the cap space to eat it, obviously, but I do want to see more from him. But, you know, hats off to him. He was solid today.
Mike.
I'll just, again, echo what Brian had to say, because that was going to be my point too, as far as the special teams value, because oftentimes that 5th, 6th receiver that makes a roster has to give you something outside of just the offense, right? They need to be able to be a gunner. They need to be able to be a kick returner. Now, we noticed that there was 2 guys, like you said, Juju working with Tyler Hughes, and then on the defensive side of the ball, Christian Gonzalez was working with, I think, might have been Mike Pellegrino or somebody, where those were the only 2 DBs or wide receivers that weren't in the special teams drill. So those guys, and obviously Christian Gonzalez is a lock, but Juju doesn't add that where all the other guys do. Tyquan Thornton could potentially be a gunner. We've kind of seen him work in there sometimes. So, like, now, does it help him that all the other guys do all that stuff so he can still make the roster as the 6th guy? Maybe. I will add, too, that at one point it looked like he was getting worked on. I don't know if it was his foot. I don't know if it was his ankle. But Juju's health has always has been the thing for him for the last couple seasons. So if something like that pops up again, then it's going to be tough for him. But he did have a good day today, Alex. You're right. Like, he showed who he can be. It's a solid receiver. Now, is he going to be the guy we've seen back in Pittsburgh or even the year he had with Kansas City? Probably not. And Taylor mentioned, too, it's going to be hard to get rid of him money-wise. So we'll see what happens. But overall, a solid day for, one of the veteran guys that they have.
I'll say this, money-wise. Sorry, Taylor, go ahead.
I just want to say a little context for how we got open, just so we can be completely transparent. The time where it was against man, it was against Mikey Victor. And I think the other two are against zone. So,
well, Mikey Victor's had a.
To be totally honest, he wouldn't get open against like Alex Austin or Christian Gonzalez. I just want to be as transparent as possible so we know, yes, he got open, but all the circumstances. That's all.
Well, I'll say Mikey Victor's been competitive. He's not the worst corner on the team. Money-wise, maybe this is kind of being simplistic or obtuse. They got rid of Juju Smith. They can get rid of Juju Smith-Schuster. They'll figure out a way to make it work. That's kind
just
of
more like, oh, we don't have to waste money. That's nice.
Right. Somebody will have a receiver get hurt or something down the line. On the special teams thing, that's where I struggle with it. Is you have Jalen Reagor, who has a chance to be a truly electric kick returner. I don't know how good Tyquan Thornton will be as a gunner, because does he have the body type to be a tackler? Tough to say. But he's trying. He's out there. He's working at it. I don't think Juju can, just at this stage in his career with a bad knee. Like, you don't want him doing that. But, man, if you're the 5th receiver, you have to play special teams. You just have to. And it's just tough for me to see the math with Juju there. Anything on any of the other receivers, any other offensive positions we missed? I'll add this, actually. JaMychal Hasty, very involved today. Had a nice catch. We've talked about that 3rd running back spot being, a sneaky good competition. Hasty, Kevin Harris, Deshaun Fenwick, the other running back they signed, Terrell Jennings, UDFA. JaMychal Hasty stood out a little bit today. So just of
that
note.
Back shoulder from Jacoby Brissett was pretty.
It was a nice catch.
It was a flat route, and I'm like, okay, like, good job. But then the back shoulder, I was like, oh, okay, that was legit. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I agree.
I'll add that I loved what I saw. I loved what I saw from Jalen Polk today. He was sort of a receiver that I had my eyes on too. I thought he popped at least early, and I tweeted it too. It was routes on air, and with a grain of salt, like you have to with this kind of stuff. That's the saying of OTAs, as we've mentioned many times. But like, he just looks confident in his route running. His hands, like, he just catches pretty much everything. Like, I don't worry about that. He seems confident in his hands, and so I think one push comes to shove, and again, you see him with some of those first groups of receivers as well. Like, look, I know it's super early, but that could turn into a really good pick and somebody who you can rely on in your passing game for a long time. So I liked what I saw from the 2nd round rookie today.
Especially the high points. Like,
yes,
he's going to be involved in the red zone. It's going to be in those real 50-50 kind of opportunities. He showed he could do it in college. And if he can do it in New England on top of Hunter Henry, Pop, who has such good short area quickness and contested catchability, would be a great complementary piece and someone who could probably contribute early on. So, yeah, totally agree, Mike.
Brian?
I'll just say other offensive, like, I'm excited for Antonio Gibson. I'm going to buy into Antonio Gibson again, as I do every year. Just how they use him, his skill set is exciting. And then the biggest day we've seen from the tight ends, and maybe not a huge surprise, is, they get in the red area, like Hunter Henry involved. I mentioned Petway caught a touchdown and then basically threw like a duck boat parade on the sideline over there. And then Jaheim Bell, like, first we saw him go up and get kind of a high point from Bailey Zappe. So good to see that room kind of get involved, as well as, you get into the red area where they should kind of shine there.
I'll actually add this too. He didn't do a ton, but I say this a lot in these practices, it's not necessarily how are you performing. It's just who's getting the opportunities, who's on the field, who's not. Mitchell Wilcox was out there a lot today with Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye. So, just file that one away. Something to keep in mind. He got a ton of reps today. I think he was probably repping over Austin Hooper at times. I didn't see Austin Hooper a ton.
So he was working a lot of special teams, Austin Hooper.
Okay.
That's kind of concerning for me because I didn't love what I saw in film from Mitchell Wilcox, to be honest. Like, he seemed like exclusively an off-ball type of tight end, and you were using him at Y. I just don't think he has really the size or skill set to be that, and he didn't stand out in any way. Again, the reps were significant, but I didn't really see anything that was impressive. So I don't know. Just because he's a guy who's been in the league, it's not a huge projection for him. He has tape that we've seen against NFL competition.
Right.
And it hasn't been great. I hope that's not something that continues. I'll just say that.
Have we done an attendance run through and mentioned that Javon Baker was there but didn't do anything? Because
Just did.
Okay, I think that's noteworthy too. I mean, it's he was there, but he didn't do much. And so again, don't sound the alarms. It's June 4th, but file that away as, maybe is he dealing with something, an injury or some sort. We'll see what happens with minicamp next week. But Javon Baker was there, a guy who was exciting last week. Did next to nothing in today's practice.
Him and Marcellus Dial both limited from the rookies.
Yeah.
So
right.
That's that. All right. We'll use Marcellus Dial to transition over to the defense. Look, I know the biggest story of the day defensively was Christian Barmore. He was constantly getting in the backfield, all of that. Good. I don't want to take anything away from Christian Barmore. Again, there's no pads on. They can't really hit each other. I have trouble devoting a ton of energy to that. Because, the strongest, most explosive lineman on the team dominated a practice with no contact. And, of course he did. That should happen. They're not doubling. They're not scheming up at the line. I don't mean to, take away from him or anything. I know this is coming off as a little condescending, but there were more interesting defensive developments for me today than that. But if we don't talk about it, it seems like we left something out. So I don't know if you guys feel differently, but that's my piece.
You'd rather him do it than not.
Right.
But,
yeah, I know. I'm glad he did it.
Yeah.
but I think if you were like, hey, Barmore, how do you feel you did today? I think he would give a similar answer to you.
Right.
Yeah. It's there was only so much I really could do. It's great that you can push someone backwards when you're massive and freakishly strong. But I don't think he would be taking any victory laps himself either.
Right. We're not betting him for Defensive Player of the Year. We're not hitting any sack totals.
I might bet him.
For different reasons.
Well, you can, but not for today.
Today.
I'm saying we're not going to go back. Let's say he has for whatever reason, I don't think this will happen. He's a dominant player. But let's say the first practice of the summer with pads, he doesn't have a dominant day. I'm not going to be coming back. We shouldn't be coming back and be like, well, that one day at OTAs, he was amazing. He's the best lineman on either side of the ball on the team by a wide margin. It's not close. Prior confirmed. What is more interesting to me today, it's kind of a two-parter. One, Christian Gonzalez, more involved. He really only did individual and positional drills the first two practices we saw. He sat out team drills. Today, involved in team drills. Had a couple close coverages. I thought he looked good. He moved well, all of that. Even with him doing more, now granted, Jonathan Jones wasn't there. But even with him doing more, Alex Austin was still on the field a ton. Drake Maye was highly complimentary of him before practice. If we want to buy stock, if we want to do that thing, right? Alex Austin. What I'm seeing from out, that's more, I wasn't expecting this. This is new. There's actually something to sink your teeth into here because, man, if they feel Alex Austin can be a competitive boundary corner, and he had 2 more pass breakups today, working with that top unit, I've said this a lot, as good as John Jones has been on the boundary the last couple of years, and there still are situations when you play the Dolphins, you're just going to match him, right? You're not going to play slot boundary against a team built like Miami. But for that, default defensive package, if Alex Austin can be a player, you have Christian Gonzalez, Alex Austin, John Jones in the slot with Marcus Jones and potentially Sean Wade or Isaiah Bolden or Marco Wilson giving you some flexibility. That is a big boy secondary. So I continue to be very encouraged by what we've seen from Alex Austin so far.
Austin's kind of given Jack Jones vibes where it was consistently you would see him show up in practice.
On the field, to be clear.
Yeah,
on the field. Yeah.
I was going to say easy does it, Taylor.
I'm sorry. I hope that's obvious, but it is the same where every single practice you see him around the ball making plays, and you can't really say that about anybody else. And then we spoke to him for a little bit after practice, and he mentioned that it has helped with camaraderie. and just himself being able to have more experience now that he's been with the team for a while and has gotten to learn more about the system and everything like that. So I would for sure buy stock in Alex Austin. I liked him last year. Mike Pellegrino, I know, likes him as well. So he's someone that if you want to get excited, a lot of things to get excited about with this defense, but for a quarterback position where you're hoping someone emerges, he's done that for you. And there haven't been any plays either where you're saying, oh, he was good, but I can't really – I think there was one play last week where he might have gotten too aggressive and I looked like he might have tackled someone to the ground. That's the only thing where it's just like, all right, ease up a little bit, but also the fire he brings, man. If he can emerge as a starter, you get that fiery, again, Jack Jones on the field type, where it's just a different kind of swagger that you don't get from John Jones and Christian Gonzalez, who are more kind of quiet, reserved guys, closer to like a Peppers, who also was very fiery today. I don't know if you guys heard that. He he got in someone's ear and dropped a couple expletives. It was very funny. He's super entertaining.
Yeah, I've been cautious about getting excited about the second side of Christian Gonzalez, only because if it doesn't work out, that's a serious problem on this team. So I've been like, all right, let's just wait and see how it goes. Don't give Alex Austin the starter job yet. But today kind of changed the course and changed my mind. Like, that's been a talking point, is that other side where, if, again, Alex, you said it best, like, if you don't have to put Jonathan Jones on the boundary and you can rely on one of these young guys and trust them, then there's just the trickle down effect in the rest of the room and the rest of the defense that just makes it, again, an A+ unit. And so if it can continue, great, because then you don't have to go and spend money on a Steph Gilmore to be your break glass in case of emergency type guy. You can just rely on these young guys. Christian Gonzalez keeps doing his thing, and then you move forward from there. So yeah, definitely an encouraging day from Austin, who there was one play too that stood out with him. It was starters on starters. Had a nice pass breakup on Tyquan Thornton on a pass from Jacoby Brissett. Had a couple more of those, but that's one that stood out for me. So yeah, all is well in the Alex Austin department so far.
Yeah, he's been very good. And Gerard said this morning that after last year, they said, like, this is an NFL player, and we saw those flashes, like the interception against the Bills. Good performance against the Chiefs late in the year. So he's got some talent. So now, like you said, no John Jones, no Marcus Jones today. It'll be interesting in mini camp when all these guys are here, how that room shakes out. You still imagine they're going to mix and match, right? They're a game playing defense, but how's that kind of base lineup going to, was Alex Austin work his way to the outside? Is John Jones still out there? So that'll be something at kind of the top of the list next week in mini camp.
One other defensive thought for me, Jalen Hawkins getting a ton of run with that top unit. I still think he's going to be their answer for when they want to go true free safety, Duggar and Peppers in the box. We've seen him in that role quite a bit, and he's another player to keep an eye on.
Hasn't Mapu had a breakup on Jaheim Bell in 2 practices?
Yeah, but he hasn't
today. He had one. Was it?
Yeah,
against
he had one, and I feel like, because I remember, I think, Mike, I was next to you, and I was like, frankly, I like Jaheim Bell, but if Marte Mapu's against him, he should be getting a breakup. I remember saying that in another practice and saw it today, and it felt like deja vu. So again, he should be doing that, but I love him in that tight end eraser role, and in that big dime package where I think Jabril Peppers is best at free safety, Duggar in that D-Mac role where he's kind of robbing in the middle, and then Marte Mapu either as the tight end eraser or as that guy who's in the deep hole. And yeah, he's making plays, which you like to see.
Hawkins,
any other thoughts on defense? Yeah,
Hawkins, that's your free safety kind of body type, right? And if we had to do 53 roster projections now, he'd probably be on it, because also they did one punt drill today, and it wasn't like they didn't actually punt, they just did the jugs, but they lined up, and he was the personal protector on the first unit. And that was a job that was Adrian Phillips and Cody Davis for the last 2-3 years, and they're obviously both gone. So looks like Hawkins might have the first crack there. And that's, if he's doing that, if he's that free safety body type, he could be on this 53-man roster where we stand right now on June 4th. Obviously a long way to go, but he's been pretty active and involved early on here.
All right. Finally,
this is completely completely unrelated. No, you mentioned Adrian Phillips. Have Adrian Phillips and Lawrence Guy signed anywhere?
No, I was thinking about that because I wrote that today, and I'm like, they didn't sign. They probably don't want to participate in spring practices right now, but they're still out there.
Yeah,
they're
were
both free agents.
The same day. Good call. Point, so interesting. All right,
good call.
Continue, Alex.
All right, special teams. Couple notable special teams happenings today. First off, field goal, 1 live field goal period, 5 kicks, all for Chad Ryland. Still no Joey Sly kicking. Ryland, it was an adventure. He went 4 of 5, but 2 of the kicks went directly over the left upright, and the third just snuck in the right side by less than a football is with. So all from about 40-ish yards. It's just tough to tell from our angle. The lines on the field are a little faded exactly where he was kicking from, but call it 40 to 45, 48, somewhere in that range.
Deeper than last week. Definitely deeper than last week.
Definitely deeper than last week, but he also missed last week as well. He's still a little erratic. That's just what it is. Like it's better, but that's in a practice setting. So, Birmingham Stallions, they play on Saturday as that's their semifinal. If they make the championship, it's another week. And then Jake Bates is eligible to sign. Any of the other, the UFL, once their season's over, they don't have to wait through the playoffs. So more kickers are going to become available. I don't know if I'm the Patriots. Clearly, Joey Sly's just here to be a presence. I don't think he's here to kick footballs. If I'm the Patriots, I'm starting to look at those UFL kickers. I'm starting to seriously look at those UFL kickers.
Right?
I mean, yeah, like I don't
Defend
know.
your
Like,
man, Brian.
He's 8 for 10. It's 8 for 10 here in the spring. Like he's still making them. All right, so
it's 8 for 10. But again, 2 directly over the upright.
They went in. They all count. They all count the same in the scorebook. So
those don't, because you never know when the refs are going to have something up.
In one of them,
rather not leave it up
out
to
of
the
the
refs.
side. We were talking about. I was like, I don't know. That didn't. If it was like that, I hate that whole rule where it's like they go up to infinity. It's like, sure, if it goes to infinity, it's gonna bounce off. What are you talking about?
Well, but it can bounce in. That's the thing. You can doink it, kick it. It's stupid. And eventually,
extend those already.
Well, they did that already. They did that like 10 years ago. You ever watch old football and the goalposts seem like super squatty? Yeah. Like, how high are we going to make them? Is it going to be the Kibbe Dome where we're just going to hang them from the roof?
Use Chad Ryland to practice how high you got to make them.
Yeah.
Maybe that should be every team a different height goalposts, and it can be like a home field advantage thing. If you have a really bad kicker, you have low goalposts. If you have a kicker you can nail it, you have high goalposts. But yeah, not a great day for Chad Ryland today in terms of field goals. Again, he was 4 of 5, so I feel weird saying that, but he was spraying the ball, and the one that missed, it wasn't very close. So the kicker watch remains on. The other thing, we did finally see kickoffs, and all 3 kickers got it. Sly, Behringer, all 3 got a chance. Ryland got the most of it. They were trying some different kickoff looks. There were some traditional, like looping kickoffs, ball up on the tee. They did one where they put the ball flat on the tee and kicked it more like a line drive. Directional kicking. Return-wise, they used 2 players. The most interesting thing for me, though, and this is why I love this, because we're going to have to see it to really start to break this down. And this is something I never considered. So there's a major challenge here built in for the return team that I personally didn't recognize until now, and talked to some other people, not in the league, but like other reporters or just people who are football, observers, maybe isn't being discussed as much as it should. So you can't move until the ball hits the ground or the returner catches it, right? So if you're on the coverage team, the coverage team, it's easy because you're looking.
For the return team, your back is
right. So the coverage team's looking back there. They know when to go exactly. The return team, there were times where you saw guys lined up and they're lined up like this. They're lined up looking over their shoulder, and they got to wait and see when that ball's caught or it hits the ground. And the reality is, in the time it takes to see that register and look back, the defense now has an advantage. They're coming at you. Guys are moving. So what are the other options? All right. Bye, Mike. Guess hates this take. All right. You good? Yeah. All right. Whatever.
I guess. I don't know. All of a sudden you guys stopped.
Okay. So wait, where was I? So yeah. So you can look back over your shoulder, but then you have that delay. One thing I thought I saw them do today, maybe I just registered this and it's not what they were doing on purpose, but you could have one guy on that line who's assigned to look back and he yells go or something. The other thing you can do is, because this is how, I noticed the ball's loud when it hits the pads of the returner, and maybe you go on the sound. But here's the thing about those last 2. whether it's a guy calling out a signal or the ball hitting. If you're on the road, that can be erased.
Even home. It could be tough at home.
Well, so if what smart teams should do, you know how when the Patriots offense is on the field, they put up quiet offense at work, they put up on the scoreboard. Like, this needs to be communicated to NFL fans. So listen up, tell your friends if you're planning on going to games. When so when your team is returning, shut up. When your team is kicking off, be loud, because you don't want the other team to be able to communicate. Now, maybe there are other ways around it that I'm not thinking of. Maybe you watch the scoreboard. And maybe that's what I literally just thought of that now. Maybe that erases all of this. Maybe you're looking at the scoreboard to see it.
We got a big scoreboard. They should be able to see.
But it is on a little bit of a delay.
True.
It is on a little bit of a delay. So, you know, I gotta ask some people about it, but like, I love it. Like, there's all these new wrinkles to it. I keep figuring out. It's so cool. So that was my big takeaway from kickoff today. I don't know how you guys feel. If you have any thoughts on the strategy, I know that some of the returns they were setting up there, it looked like they were working on some more intricate blocking schemes. Taylor, we'll start with you.
You shouldn't start with me. I like to start with Brian. It's so new, man.
That's the fun part.
It's
new. We get to watch.
I was going to jump in, and then I was like, how do we not let Brian go first? Yeah.
All right, Brian. Well, because Brian went first for Chad Ryland.
That's the fun part. It's new. We get to watch it develop right in front of our eyes. But I noticed that too. Like, how are they going to, respond to that? How are they going to get off? Because you are like, those guys are right in your face now, and they have a running start, the coverage team. So you got to be quick with that. Some of the schemes looks like maybe like a run play type thing without getting like in too much detail. But the only other thing, you have a choice, a 2-man return team or a 1-man return team. They were pretty consistent 2-man return team,
which is, I think, the right call.
Me too. That's how I would. That's how I'd attack it. You get one blocker there, at least with kind of a running start. You can work in reverses. They didn't do any of that today. That's probably something more down the line, but yeah, that's what I would do. I like the 2 back there, and that's how they kind of did it. It was Rager and Gibson got the first crack. They rotated a lot of guys.
Yeah,
but those were the first 2 up on that return team.
Mike.
Yeah, you guys nailed it. My only other, sort of observation there was, like Brian said, with Gibson and who was it? Was it Gibson and Polk? Now I'm losing my
Rager,
Polk was back there. Wallace was back there.
Rager,
a few guys back there.
There was a ton of guys, so they're rolling those guys through. We'll see what happens. But the other thing too was that a lot of the times when they did the kickoffs was they laid the ball flat and they're trying to sort of like just lob it into that sort of the landing zone is what you call it. So trying to figure out a way to not kick it out of bounds, not kick it out. And they also got it down there pretty quickly, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't like they were leaving it in the air. It was basically just throw it in the landing zone and try and let them return it somehow. Maybe that's a way to get the ball there quickly. It bounces quick. It hits off a guy, and then it's a live ball or something. I don't know, but they were. It sort of seemed like they were. Fooling around with that. So
it looked like
the coverage team can move when the ball hits the ground, not when it's caught. That's a difference from the XFL rule because they did tweak it a little bit. And if there's a risk there, because if the ball rolls into the end zone or rolls out of bounds, obviously you're giving up a ton of yards. But also, if you can play it where the ball's going to hit the ground first, you don't allow the returner to get that head start. So I would definitely experiment with ways to put the ball on the ground and bounce it to the returner rather than just outright kick it off.
And it did look like there were different ways they were doing it. Sometimes it was flat and it looked more like a squib. There were times where it was up and then you really wanted to try to get the hang time. So that was to be honest, I made the mistake of watching from the opposite field. So I was watching another drill. I looked over, had binoculars, and I'm like, I can't see what's going on. And by the time I got over there, it was a little late. Brian, I told you, I was like, yeah, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. So I know for next time, it's hard to process when you're looking through a binocular, but I thought that was interesting, the different ways they were practicing actually getting the ball down there. And then again, the returners where it was like, the receivers who were good in space, like the running backs, saw Kevin Harris back there. So, yeah, they were mixing and matching different groupings. But, yeah, Brian, you nailed it.
It was a lot of, like, heavy personnel, tight ends, linebackers in the middle. And then, like, as you got wider out, it was more corners and some of those lighter body types. So maybe that – who knows? Maybe that will change by the time they dive farther into this. The only other thing, like, kind of surprised Isaiah Bolden isn't returning kicks like at all. Like they had 7 or 8 guys again, it's 2 returners back there. So like they had 7 or 8 guys rotated in there, and Isaiah Bolden wasn't one, and he was like historically good in college at Jacksonville State. He almost broke one like in the preseason when he was healthy last year. So that's someone who you would imagine would factor into that equation, but maybe with the new rules, they see something different, and he hasn't been back there. So that was just something noticeable in the return game too.
All right. Anybody else? If not, I wanted to hit on a couple quick things really quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Go for it.
All right. Some Jets fan was in here talking trash. Why do you guys even talk about the Pats that win 2 games? I talk about the Patriots because I get paid to talk about football. It's a beautiful thing. You should try to experience it sometimes. Not that easy, but it's a ton of fun. That's why I talk about the Patriots.
Jesus.
And they're going to win more than 2 games. And it's practice. Let's see it on game day. Yeah, that's kind of the whole summation of the show. That's going to be the summation in the next few months, but they don't play a game for another few months. This is what we have to talk about.
We got a show today. We got to talk about
this is what we're going to talk about. We got a show to do today. That's damn right. So that'll do it for us. We can kind of plan a little bit live on the air here. I think the plan is, I don't think we're going to do crossover shows for the first couple days of minicamp. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think just because there's a lot going on, it's going to be Patriots Beat. It's going to be Patriots Daily Monday and Tuesday. There won't be a show after Wednesday's practice because we will be at Gillette all night for the Tom Brady ceremony on Wednesday and then game 3 of the NBA Finals. But the Brady ceremony. So I think the plan is to come back on Thursday, all 4 of us, do a big show, full mini camp recap, spring practice recap, and the Brady ceremony. So that'll be a fun one. That will definitely be one to tune into. So
that'll be like a 4.5-hour show.
Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be a marathon. And I mean, but then we go on. I mean, we'll still be doing shows, but it's summer break for Patriots coverage. It's as down of a time as you get on the NFL calendar. So make sure you subscribe to the Patriots. Make sure you subscribe to the Patriots CLNS channel. You'll get our Patriots Daily, Patriots Beat. All right, Taylor, you have a list of free agents. You want to pull that up?
Oh, because somebody asked if there were any good free agents left. Mike and I kind of touched on this in our mailbag. So I already have a list if we want to just look at it real quick and see if any names pop out.
You can pull it up. I'll just say this. We're still in that period where guys aren't going to want to do OTAs. And I think we're still in the period where free agents count against comp picks, right? Doesn't that end mid-June?
That ended after the draft.
Did it? Okay. So maybe some guys signed, but these
are probably going to be like summer editions. I don't think this is anybody they'd sign anytime soon, but these are people that are available.
The Zeke Elliott time range.
Right. There's a couple names I like on here. Just at first glance, I'll give you my opinion. Gilmore, obviously, I've been huge on that. Justin Simmons, would love to see him. Yannick Ngakoue, sure. I don't really know what his role would be, but he's a good player. I will say I've gotten asked a ton about David Bakhtiari. If he could still play, he'd be on the Jets. That's just the reality. And like just talking to people, I think he's just his knee's done. He's played 10 games in the last 3 years. You want to bring him in on a flyer, that's it. I would also add guard to this list. Because
there are really a lot of guards left.
Well, there's a couple guys, and now I'm blanking on the names.
Van Roten, I think, is one, maybe. Greg Van
Roten's one, but there's a couple. I have it on my thing here. There's a couple guys who played for McAdoo in New York that are available who were starters last year.
Okay.
Mark Lewinsky and Justin Pugh. I'd also add Trey Turner and Phil Haynes were starters last year. So it wouldn't surprise me if they sign a veteran guard.
Yeah. Also in this list, if the left tackle spot is so bad, they still have 2 break glass in case of emergency options in Donovan Smith if he wants to be on a rebuilding team, and Charles Leno, who was just on the Commander, so I don't really know that he's going to be super picky. And I have DJ Humphries with an asterisk because he tore his ACL. He's not going to be ready for a while.
Okay, is that what that is?
Yeah, and then Micah Hyde has an asterisk because he said he'd only want to play for the Bills or he's going to retire.
Maybe they can bring in one of those left tackles and cross train him at right tackle.
I
had to.
We need Riley Reef back to play guard.
Yeah.
Charles Leno's the guy I'd sign. Well, maybe they bring back Riley Reef to play guard. Like that's the thing.
He's old and
he wasn't bad at guard. No, he wasn't bad at guard. They just took them forever to figure that out. By the time they figured it out, he blew out his knee in the preseason game. Yeah, I'd go Charles Leno here. if I was going at corner. I mean, I just love the idea of Steph Gilmore. The other three options honestly aren't bad, but one, Steph's been here. Two, I like stylistically him working with Gilmore or him working with Gonzalez is just such an attractive option to me. So
if the cornerback competition with the young guys doesn't work out 100%, I feel like it's a no-brainer. Also, JC Jackson, I should have put on this list. That's my bad. But
it's kind of a different situation.
I mean, he's still a free agent, though. And if we're talking about guys they would add, that Drake Maye has specifically brought him up as someone that they would be open to reuniting with. Chris Price actually mentioned on our show that he is an option for somebody they could bring in. So, I mean, if we're talking most realistic guys, again, I love Steph, but we can't ignore JC Jackson.
I guess my point is, like, I don't know that – I think JC Jackson either plays for the Patriots this year or he doesn't play. Like, these are some guys that you might – Steph Gilmore is going to have a market when the time comes. Xavier Howard's going to have a market when the time comes. I think JC Jackson, you call him – when I say a market, I don't mean 32 teams. I mean, I think there'll be a couple, right? I think with the way last year went, the Patriots know JC Jackson. They're familiar with him, so they have that inside. I think if you want JC Jackson, you can call him. He'll show up. I don't think you have to worry about him going elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by different situation.
For sure.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts on the free agents?
I just love Justin Simmons.
Yeah, that would be so. Although Jalen Hawkins showing up. So
Justin Simmons is not coming.
I'll say this. I noticed you didn't put I noticed you didn't put running backs on there, even though that could be a need. There's no good running backs.
That's why there's no running backs. Wild. that's why.
Maybe they'll re-sign CJ Marable, who they had in camp last year, UFL standout, but it's in a league where we talk about there's so many extra running backs. There aren't right now. It's kind of crazy. So that's maybe a after roster cut down thing.
First of all, I made this in my free time and I don't know how to use Photoshop. So no, you can't get a semi-pro graphic.
And Brian. This is what this show. It is. Yeah, don't call out Amit. You're just grinding it out football stuff. We don't have time for fancy graphics. That's not.
What do you think this is?
3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of broadcast. So that seems like as good a note as any to end it on. So again, Patriots beat. We'll be back at some point this week. I got to text you, Brian, because we got the finals Thursday. I got to figure out what I'm doing. Taylor and Mike, it's Patriots Daily. So you will be back tomorrow, I would assume. Anything you want to plug?
It's a big week for guests. Not a ton going on in the football world right now, but tomorrow I've got Trevor Sikkema from PFF. That's going to be really exciting. I've got Steven Ruiz on Thursday coming by, and then on Friday I've got Andre Weingarten. He has spent time as a Madden ratings adjuster, as well as someone who's been a pro scout in the league. So a lot of really smart, well-informed opinions that are going to be on the show. Should be a blast.
Weingarten's good. Just following him on Twitter. He's good. So,
you're mad and stuff. Yeah. That's what he's
mad. Oh yeah. So you can check that. I wrote about Madden today, 985sportshub.com. Brian's stuff is on Pat's Pulpit. These two guys on the end, Mike Taylor, CLNSmedia.com. So for Brian Hines, Taylor Kyles, Mike Kadlick, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.